Euthyphro by Plato. Translated by Benjamin Jowett, 1800s. Modern translation by ChatGPT 3.5, 2023. Introduction by Benjamin Jowett.
In the Meno, Anytus had left Socrates with the words, "In any city, especially Athens, it is easier to harm than to do good to people." Socrates was looking forward to another chance to talk with him. In the Euthyphro, Socrates is awaiting his trial for impiety. But before the trial begins, Plato wants to put the world on trial and convince them that they are ignorant about the very thing Socrates is accused of. The discussion is prompted by an incident that may have actually happened in the family of Euthyphro, a knowledgeable diviner and soothsayer from Athens. Euthyphro and Socrates meet in the porch of the king Archon. Both have legal matters to attend to. Socrates is being sued for impiety by Miletus. It's worth noting that Socrates himself is unlikely to sue someone else, and Euthyphro is suing his own father for murder. The latter case came about like this. A poor dependent of Euthyphro's family killed one of their slaves in Naxos. Euthyphro's father ordered that the guilty person be bound and thrown into a ditch, and he sent a messenger to Athens to ask the interpreters of religion what should be done with him. But before the messenger returned, the criminal died from hunger and exposure. This is why Euthyphro is charging his father with murder. Socrates is confident that before Euthyphro would undertake such a prosecution, he must have a thorough understanding of piety and impiety. Since Socrates himself is being tried for impiety, he thinks it would be best to learn from Euthyphro, who is considered an unquestionable authority by everyone, including the judges, what piety and impiety truly are. So, what is piety? Euthyphro, who is eager to take on the responsibility due to his abundant knowledge, replies, "Piety is doing what I'm doing, prosecuting your father, if he's guilty, for murder. It's doing what the gods do, like Zeus did to Kronos and Kronos did to Uranus." Socrates doesn't like these mythological stories, and he suspects that his dislike for them is the reason he's being accused of impiety. "Are those stories really true?" he asks. "Yes, they are," Euthyphro answers, and he's happy to tell Socrates more of them. But Socrates would like a more satisfactory answer to the question, what is piety? "Doing what I'm doing, charging a father with murder," Euthyphro says, might be one example of piety, but it can't be considered a general definition. Euthyphro then says that piety is what is loved by the gods, and impiety is what is not loved by them. But Socrates points out that there may be differences of opinion among the gods, just as there are among men. Especially when it comes to good and evil, which have no fixed rule, these differences can lead to quarrels. Therefore, what may be loved by one god may not be loved by another, and the same action can be both pious and impious. For example, Euthyphro's punishment of his father may be pleasing to Zeus, who punished his own father in a similar way, but not equally pleasing to Kronos or Uranus, who suffered at the hands of their sons. Euthyphro insists that there is no difference of opinion among gods or men when it comes to punishing a murderer. Socrates counters that this assumes the point at issue. "If we consider all the circumstances of the case, can you prove that your father was guilty of murder, or that all the gods agree with our prosecution of him? And mustn't you admit that what is hated by one god may be liked by another?" Setting aside this point, Socrates suggests amending the definition and saying that what all the gods love is pious, and what they all hate is impious. Euthyphro agrees to this. Socrates then analyzes the new definition. He argues that in other cases, the act comes before the state. For example, being carried, loved, etc. precedes the state of being carried, loved, etc. Therefore, what is dear to the gods is dear to them because they first loved it, not loved by them because it is dear to them. But piety or holiness is loved by the gods because it is pious or holy, which means it is loved by them because it is dear to them. This seems contradictory. Euthyphro has only given an attribute or accident of piety, not its essence. Euthyphro admits that his explanations seem to go in circles, like the moving figures of Daedalus, the ancestor of Socrates who passed down his art to his descendants. Socrates, wanting to stimulate Euthyphro's lazy mind, raises the question in a different way. Is everything pious just? Yes. Is everything just pious? No. Then what part of justice is piety? Euthyphro answers that piety is the part of justice that concerns the gods, just as there is another part of justice that concerns men. But what does it mean to concern the gods? When we say that dogs, horses, and men concern something, it implies that they are somehow made better by it. But how do pious acts make the gods any better? Euthyphro explains that by pious acts, he means acts of service or ministration. Yes, But the work of the farmer, the doctor, and the builder has an end. What is the purpose of serving the gods, and what do we help them achieve? Euthyphro responds that these difficult questions cannot be answered quickly, and he would rather say that piety is knowing how to please the gods through words and actions, through prayers and sacrifices. In other words, says Socrates, piety is a science of asking and giving, asking for what we want and giving the gods what they want. It's like a business transaction between gods and humans. But how can we give them anything good in return when they are the givers of all good things? No, but we give them honor. Then we are giving them not what is beneficial, but what is pleasing or dear to them. And this point has already been disproven. Socrates, despite being tired of Euthyphro's evasive answers, remains firm in his belief that he must understand the nature of piety, or else he would never have accused his own father. He still hopes that Euthyphro will condescend to teach him. However, Euthyphro is in a hurry and cannot stay, and Socrates' last hope of learning about piety before his trial for impiety is dashed. The irony in the dialogue continues until the end. The purpose of the Euthyphro is clearly to contrast the true nature of piety and impiety with popular beliefs about them. However, once these popular beliefs have been disproven, Socrates does not offer his own definition. Similar to the Laches and Lysis, he paves the way for an answer to the question he has raised, but true to his character, he refuses to answer it himself. Euthyphro is a religious person and may be the same person mentioned elsewhere as the author of a philosophy of names. He has the arrogance and self-confidence of a sophist, and it never occurs to him that he might be wrong in prosecuting his own father. Like a sophist, he is unable to provide a general definition or follow an argument. His stubbornness, narrow-mindedness, and certainty are characteristic of his role as a priest. His inability to grasp an argument can be compared to a similar flaw observed in the Rhapsodion. However, he is not a bad person and is friendly towards Socrates, recognizing his familiar sign with interest. Although he cannot follow Socrates, he is willing to be led by him and eagerly seizes on any suggestion that saves him from having to think. He is also an enemy of Meletus, who is using the popular dislike of religious innovations to harm Socrates. Euthyphro amusingly believes that he has weapons in his own arsenal that would easily defeat Meletus. He is genuinely committed to prosecuting his father, who accidentally committed homicide and bears some responsibility. To him, purging the crime is a duty, regardless of who committed it. This marks the beginning of the contrast between a literal, narrow, and unenlightened religious conscience and the higher concept of religion that Socrates tries in vain to elicit from Euthyphro. The idea of religion that first occurs to Euthyphro, and to many others who do not express their thoughts as openly, is piety is doing as I do. People are not easily convinced that any other religion is better than their own, or that other nations, like the Greeks in Socrates' time, were equally serious about their religious beliefs and difficulties. The main difference between us and them is that they were slowly learning what we are currently forgetting. Greek mythology did not distinguish between accidental homicide and murder, and the pollution of blood was seen as the same in both cases, as believed by the Athenian diviner. They had not yet learned the lesson that philosophy was teaching, which was to not appeal to Homer and Hesiod as authorities in religion. The diviner is willing to defend his actions using the examples of the gods, which Socrates cannot tolerate and suspects has contributed to his reputation for impiety. This provides one answer to the question of why Socrates was put to death. Another answer is conveyed in the statement, the Athenians do not care about any man being thought wise until he begins to make other men wise, and then for some reason or other they are angry. This can be considered the rule of popular tolerance in most other countries, not just in Athens. During the argument, Socrates notes that the controversial nature of morals and religion arises from the difficulty of verifying them. There is no measure or standard to which they can be compared. The next definition, piety is that which is loved by the gods, fails due to a refined distinction between the state and the act, corresponding to the adjective and participle, or perhaps the participle and verb. The act comes before the state, and the state of being loved is preceded by the act of being loved. However, piety or holiness is preceded by the act of being pious, not by the act of being loved. Therefore, piety and the state of being loved are different. Socrates is delving into deeper realms of thought and emotion through subtle dialectic. He argues that the phrase, loved by the gods, only expresses an attribute of piety, not its essence. He then presents his third and final definition, piety is a part of justice. Socrates aims to establish a moral foundation for religion, reconciling it with morality as the great poets Aeschylus, Sophocles, and Pindar had unknowingly anticipated. The soothsayer adds the ceremonial aspect of attending upon the gods. When Socrates questions the nature of this attention to the gods, the soothsayer explains that piety is a matter of business, a science of giving and asking. Socrates points out the anthropomorphism in these ideas. However, instead of continuing to explain that true service to the gods entails aligning with the spirit and cooperating in all things true and good, Socrates stops short. This is a lesson that the soothsayer couldn't comprehend and must be learned individually. There are three main purposes or interests in this dialogue. Firstly, the dialectical development of the concept of piety. Secondly, the contrast between true and false religion, although this is only partially explored. Lastly, the defense of Socrates. The connections with the apology and the credo, the withholding of a conclusion as seen in other dialogues, the profound understanding of the religious world, the dramatic power and interplay between the two characters. And the remarkable irony all suggest that the Euthyphro is an authentic work by Plato. The denouncement of popular mythological representations echoes themes in Republic too. Piety as a virtue has been mentioned before in the Protagoras, but it is not among the four cardinal virtues in Republic 4. The figures of Daedalus and Proteus have appeared in previous dialogues, and the kingly science will appear again in the Republic and Statesman. However, these similarities and differences do not provide evidence of the date of the dialogue.
Persons of the dialogue, Socrates, Euthyphro. Scene, the porch of the King Archon.
Why have you left the Lyceum, Socrates? And what are you doing in the porch of the King Archon? Surely you're not involved in a legal case before the king like me?
Not in a legal case, Euthyphro. Impeachment is the term the Athenians use.
What? I suppose someone is prosecuting you, as I can't believe you would be prosecuting someone else.
Certainly not.
So someone else is prosecuting you?
Yes.
Who is it?
A young man who is not well known, Euthyphro. I hardly know him. His name is Miletus, and he is from the demi of Pityus. Maybe you remember what he looks like. He has a hooked nose, long straight hair, and an unkempt beard.
No, I don't remember him, Socrates. But what is the charge he brings against you?
What is the charge? Well, it's a very serious charge that reveals a lot about the character of the young man. He claims to know how the youth are corrupted and who their corruptors are. I think he must be a wise man, and since I am the opposite of wise, he has discovered my corruption of his young friends. And it is the state, our mother, that will judge me for this. Among all our politicians, he is the only one who seems to me to be starting off on the right path by cultivating virtue in the youth. Like a good farmer, he takes care of the young shoots and removes those who destroy them. This is only the first step. He will later attend to the older branches. If he continues as he has begun, he will be a great public benefactor.
I hope so, but I'm afraid, Socrates, that the opposite will turn out to be true. My opinion is that by attacking you, he is actually striking at the foundation of the state. But how does he claim that you corrupt the youth?
He brings a surprising accusation against me which initially causes astonishment. He says that I am a poet or creator of gods and that I invent new gods while denying the existence of the old ones. That is the basis of his indictment.
I understand, Socrates. He intends to attack you because of the familiar sign that occasionally appears to you, as you've mentioned. He thinks you are a heretic, and he wants to bring you before the court for it. He knows that such a charge is easily accepted by the public, as I too have experienced. When I speak in the assembly about divine matters and predict the future, they laugh at me and think I'm mad. Yet everything I say is true. But they are jealous of all of us, and we must be brave and confront them.
Their laughter, my friend Euthyphro, is not of great importance. For a man may be considered wise, but the Athenians, I suspect, do not pay much attention to him until he starts sharing his wisdom with others. Then, for some reason or another, perhaps out of jealousy as you say, they become angry.
I am unlikely to test their patience in this way.
I suppose not, as you are reserved in your behavior and rarely share your wisdom. But I have a habit of expressing myself to everyone, and I would even pay for someone to listen. I am afraid that the Athenians might consider me too talkative. If, as you say, they only laugh at me, the time in court might pass cheerfully. But perhaps they are serious, and only the soothsayers can predict the outcome.
I believe that the matter will end with no consequences, Socrates, and that you will win your case. I think I will win mine as well.
And what is your case, Euthyphro? Are you the one bringing charges, or the defendant?
I am the one bringing charges.
Against whom?
You will think I am mad when I tell you.
Why, does the person you are accusing have wings?
No, he is not very flighty at his age.
Who is he?
My father.
Your father, my good man?
Yes.
And what is he accused of?
Murder, Socrates.
By the gods, Euthyphro. The common people know so little about what is right and true. A man must be extraordinary and wise to bring such a case.
Indeed, Socrates, he must.
I suppose the man whom your father murdered was one of your relatives. Clearly he was, because if he had been a stranger, you would never have thought of prosecuting him.
I find it amusing, Socrates, that you make a distinction between a relative and a non-relative. Surely the guilt is the same in both cases if you knowingly associate with a murderer when you should clear yourself and him by bringing charges. The real question is whether the murdered man was justly killed. If he was, then your duty is to leave the matter alone. But if he was unjustly killed, then even if the murderer lives under the same roof as you and eats at the same table, you should bring charges against him. The man who died was a poor worker on our farm in Naxos, and one day, in a fit of drunken anger, he got into a fight with one of our servants and killed him. My father tied him up and threw him into a ditch, then sent to Athens to consult a diviner on what to do with him. Meanwhile, he paid no attention to him and didn't care for him, as he saw him as a murderer and thought it wouldn't matter if he died. And that's exactly what happened. The cold, hunger, and chains had such an effect on him that he died before the messenger returned from the diviner. My father and family are angry with me for taking the side of the murderer and prosecuting my father. They say he didn't kill him, and even if he did, the dead man was just a murderer, so I shouldn't take any action. They claim that it's impious for a son to bring charges against his father. This shows, Socrates, how little they understand the gods' views on piety and impiety.
Good heavens, Euthyphro! Is your knowledge of religion and matters of piety and impiety so precise that, assuming the circumstances are as you described, you are not afraid of committing an impious act by bringing charges against your father?
The best thing about me, Socrates, and what sets me apart from others, is my precise knowledge of such matters. What good would I be without it?
Remarkable friend. I think it would be wise for me to become your disciple. Before the trial with Miletus begins, I will challenge him and say that I have always been deeply interested in religious matters. Now, since he accuses me of having foolish ideas and introducing new religious beliefs, I have become your disciple. Miletus, as I will say to him, acknowledges Euthyphro as a great theologian with sound opinions. If he approves of you, he should approve of me and not bring me to court. But if he disapproves, he should start by indicting you, my teacher, who will be the ruin not of the young, but of the old, namely myself, whom he instructs, and his own elderly father, whom he advises and chastises. And if Miletus refuses to listen to me and continues without shifting the indictment from me to you, I will have no choice but to repeat this challenge in court.
Yes, indeed, Socrates. And if he tries to indict me, I am mistaken if I don't find a flaw in his argument. The court will have much more to say to him than to me.
Knowing this, my dear friend, I am eager to become your disciple. I notice that no one seems to pay attention to you, not even Miletus. But his sharp eyes have immediately found me and he has accused me of impiety. Therefore, I implore you to tell me the nature of piety and impiety which you claim to know so well as murder and other offenses against the gods. What are they? Isn't piety always the same in every action? And isn't impiety always the opposite of piety and also the same with itself, having one notion that encompasses everything that is impious?
Certainly, Socrates.
So, what is piety and what is impiety?
Piety is doing what I am doing. That is, prosecuting anyone who is guilty of murder, sacrilege, or any similar crime, regardless of whether they are your father, mother, or anyone else. Not prosecuting them is impiety. Let me give you a notable example to prove my point. People regard Zeus as the best and most righteous of the gods, yet they admit that he bound his father, Cronos, for wickedly devouring his own sons. Zeus also punished his own father, Uranus, for a similar reason. But when I proceed against my father, they are angry with me. They are inconsistent when it comes to the gods and me.
Could it be that the reason I am charged with impiety is because I cannot accept these stories about the gods? People might think I am wrong because of that. But since you who are well informed about them approve of these stories, I can only defer to your superior wisdom. What else can I say when I confess that I know nothing about them? Tell me, for the love of Zeus, do you truly believe that these stories are true?
Yes, Socrates, and even more astonishing things that the world is unaware of.
Do you really believe that the gods fought with each other, had quarrels, battles, and such as the poets say and as depicted in the works of great artists? The temples are filled with such depictions, like the embroidered robe of Athena carried to the Acropolis during the Pan-Athenia festival. Are all these tales about the gods true, Euthyphro?
Yes, Socrates. And, as I mentioned before, I can tell you many other things about the gods that would amaze you.
I'm sure you can, and you can tell me those things another time when I have leisure. But for now, I would like a more precise answer from you, my friend. You haven't yet given me a clear answer to the question, what is piety? When I asked, you only replied with an example of charging your father with murder.
And what I said was true, Socrates.
No doubt, Euthyphro. But you would agree that there are many other pious acts?
There are.
Remember, I didn't ask you for 2 or 3 examples of piety. I asked you to explain the general idea that makes all pious things pious. Do you recall that there was one idea that made the impious impious and the pious pious?
I remember.
Then tell me the nature of this idea. Once I know, I will have a standard by which I can judge actions, whether they are yours or anyone else's. Then I can say that one action is pious and another is impious.
I will tell you, if you'd like.
I would very much like to know.
Piety, then, is that which is dear to the gods, and impiety is that which is not dear to them.
Very good, Euthyphro. You have given me the kind of answer I was looking for. But whether what you say is true or not, I cannot yet tell. However, I have no doubt that you will prove the truth of your words.
Of course.
Well then, let's examine what we are saying. That which is dear to the gods is pious, and that which is hateful to the gods is impious. These two are extreme opposites, right?
Yes, that's what I said.
And it was well said?
Yes, Socrates, I believe so. It was certainly said.
Furthermore, Euthyphro, the gods were known to have enmities, hatreds, and differences, correct?
Yes, that was also said.
And what kind of difference creates enmity and anger? For example, if you and I, my good friend, disagree about a number, do such differences make us enemies? Don't we just turn to arithmetic and settle the matter with a sum?
True.
Or if we disagree about sizes, don't we quickly resolve the differences by measuring?
Very true.
And when we have a controversy about weight, don't we use a weighing machine to settle it?
Indeed we do.
But what differences cannot be decided this way? What differences make us angry and enemies? I suspect you don't have an answer at the moment, so let me suggest that these enmities arise when the matters of difference are about what is just and unjust, good and evil, honorable and dishonorable. Aren't these the points on which people differ and quarrel when they can't satisfactorily resolve their differences?
Yes, Socrates, the nature of the differences that cause our quarrels is as you describe.
And the quarrels of the gods, noble Euthyphro, when they occur, are of a similar nature, aren't they?
Certainly they are.
They have differences of opinion about what is good and evil, just and unjust, honorable and dishonorable. If there were no such differences, there would be no quarrels among them, right?
You are absolutely right.
Doesn't every person love what they consider noble, just, and good, and hate the opposite?
That's true.
But people have different opinions about what is just and unjust, and that's why they argue and fight.
That's true.
So, the gods both love and hate the same things, and those things are both loved and hated by them?
That's true.
And if that's the case, Euthyphro, then the same things can be both pious and impious?
I suppose so.
Well, my friend, I'm surprised that you haven't answered my question. I didn't ask you to tell me an action that is both pious and impious. But now it seems that what is loved by the gods is also hated by them. So, Euthyphro, by punishing your father, you might be doing something that is pleasing to Zeus but displeasing to Cronos or Uranus, and what is acceptable to Hephaestus but unacceptable to Here. There may be other gods with similar differences of opinion.
But I believe, Socrates, that all the gods would agree that a murderer should be punished. There would be no difference of opinion about that.
Well, when it comes to humans, Euthyphro, have you ever heard anyone argue that a murderer or any other wrongdoer should not be punished?
I would say that those are the questions they are always arguing, especially in courts of law. They commit all sorts of crimes, and there is nothing they won't do or say to defend themselves.
But do they admit their guilt, Euthyphro, and still say that they shouldn't be punished?
No, they don't.
So, there are some things they don't dare to say or do. They don't argue that the guilty should go unpunished, but they deny their guilt, don't they?
Yes.
So, they don't argue that the wrongdoer shouldn't be punished, but they argue about who the wrongdoer is, what they did, and when.
True.
And the gods are in the same situation if, as you claim, they argue about what is just and unjust, and some say that injustice exists among them while others deny it. Surely, neither God nor man would ever say that the doer of injustice shouldn't be punished?
That's true, Socrates, for the most part.
But they argue about the specifics, both gods and men. And if they argue at all, they argue about an act that is in question which some affirm to be just and others to be unjust. Isn't that true?
Absolutely true.
Well then, my dear friend Euthyphro, tell me, for my better understanding, what evidence do you have that all the gods believe that a servant who is guilty of murder is put in chains by the master of the deceased, and dies before the master can learn from the interpreters of the gods what to do with him, dies unjustly? And why should a son proceed against his father and accuse him of murder on behalf of such a person? How can you prove that all the gods unanimously approve of this action? Show me that they do, and I will praise your wisdom for as long as I live.
It will be a difficult task, but I can make it very clear to you.
I understand. You mean to say that I am not as quick to understand as the judges, because you will surely prove to them that the act is unjust and abhorrent to the gods.
Yes, indeed, Socrates, at least if they will listen to me.
But they will surely listen if they find you to be a good speaker. While you were speaking, an idea came to my mind. I said to myself, well, what if Euthyphro does prove to me that all the gods consider the death of the servant unjust? How does that help me understand piety and impiety any better? Because even if this action is hateful to the gods, it has also been shown to be pleasing and dear to them. So, Euthyphro, I don't ask you to prove that. Let's assume, if you like, that all the gods condemn and detest such an action. But I will modify the definition to say that what all the gods hate is impious and what they love is pious or holy. And what some of them love and others hate is both or neither. Shall we define piety and impiety in this way?
Why not, Socrates?
Why not indeed? As far as I'm concerned, Euthyphro, there's no reason why not. But whether this admission will greatly assist you in instructing me, as you promised, is something you'll have to consider.
Yes, I would say that what all the gods love is pious and holy, and what they all hate is impious.
Should we investigate the truth of this, Euthyphro, or should we simply accept it based on our own authority and that of others? What do you think?
We should investigate, and I believe that the statement will withstand scrutiny.
We will find out soon enough, my good friend. The first thing I want to understand is whether the gods love what is pious because it is pious, or if it is pious because the gods love it.
I don't understand what you mean, Socrates.
Let me explain. We talk about carrying and being carried, leading and being led, seeing and being seen. You know that there is a difference in all these cases, right? And you know what that difference is?
I think I understand.
And isn't the thing that is loved different from the thing that loves?
Yes, it is.
Well, now tell me, is the thing that is carried in the state of being carried because it is being carried, or for some other reason?
No, it's because it's being carried.
And the same goes for what is led and what is seen.
Yes, that's true.
So, a thing is not seen because it is visible, but rather it is visible because it is seen. And a thing is not led because it is in the state of being led, or carried because it is in the state of being carried, but the opposite is true. Now, Euthyphro, I think my meaning will be clear to you. What I mean is that any action or emotion implies a prior action or emotion. It doesn't become because it is becoming, but it is in a state of becoming because it becomes. And it doesn't suffer because it is in a state of suffering, but it is in a state of suffering because it suffers. Do you agree?
Yes, I agree.
Isn't it true that something that is loved is either in a state of becoming or suffering?
Yes.
And the same applies to what we discussed earlier. The state of being loved follows the act of being loved, not the other way around.
Certainly.
So, what do you say about piety, Euthyphro? According to your definition, isn't piety loved by all the gods?
Yes.
Is it loved because it is pious or holy, or for some other reason?
No, that's the reason.
So, it is loved because it is holy, not holy because it is loved?
Yes.
And something that is dear to the gods is loved by them and is in a state to be loved by them because it is loved by them?
Certainly.
Then, Euthyphro, that which is dear to the gods is not holy, and that which is holy is not loved by God, as you claim. They are two different things.
What do you mean, Socrates?
I mean to say that we have acknowledged that the gods love what is holy because it is holy, not that it is holy because they love it.
Yes.
But that which is dear to the gods is dear to them because they love it, not loved by them because it is dear to them.
True.
So, my friend Euthyphro, if what is holy is the same as what is dear to God and it is loved because it is holy, then what is dear to God would have been loved because it is dear to God. But if what is dear to God is dear to him because he loves it, then what is holy would have been holy because he loves it. But now you see that the opposite is true and they are completely different from each other. One, Theophiles, is loved because it is of a kind to be loved, and the other, Ocean, is of a kind to be loved because it is loved. It seems to me, Euthyphro, that when I ask you about the essence of holiness, you only offer an attribute and not the essence itself, which is being loved by all the gods. But you still refuse to explain the nature of holiness to me. So, if you don't mind, I will ask you again to not hide your knowledge and tell me what holiness or piety truly is, whether it is dear to the gods or not, because we won't argue about that, and what impiety is.
I really don't know, Socrates, how to express what I mean. Somehow, our arguments, no matter what grounds we base them on, seem to wander and escape from us.
Your words, Euthyphro, are like the work of my ancestor Daedalus. If I were the one saying them, you could say that my arguments wander and won't stay in one place because I am his descendant. But since these ideas are yours, you must come up with another criticism because, as you yourself admit, they tend to move around.
Well, Socrates, I still say that you are the Daedalus who sets arguments in motion. Not me, but you make them move and wander. They would have never moved, as far as I'm concerned.
Then I must be greater than Daedalus because while he only made his own inventions move, I make the arguments of others move as well. And the funny thing is, I'd rather not. I would give up the wisdom of Daedalus and the wealth of Tantalus just to be able to keep them fixed. But enough of that. Since I see that you're being lazy, I will try to show you how you can teach me about the nature of piety. I hope you won't mind putting in the effort. So, tell me, is something that is pious necessarily just?
Yes.
So, is everything that is just pious? Or is everything that is pious just, but not everything that is just pious?
I don't understand what you mean, Socrates.
I acknowledge that you are wiser than me, despite your youth. However, your abundance of wisdom has made you lazy. Please make an effort to understand me as it is not difficult. Let me explain what I mean by using an example of what I do not mean. The poet Stasinus sings, "You will not tell of Zeus, the creator of all things, for where there is fear, there is also reverence." I disagree with this poet. Shall I explain in what way?
Please go ahead.
I would not say that fear always leads to reverence. Many people fear poverty, disease, and other evils, but they do not show reverence towards these things.
That is true.
However, where there is reverence, there is fear. When someone feels reverence and shame about committing an action, they fear having a bad reputation.
No doubt.
So it is incorrect to say that where there is fear, there is also reverence. We should say that where there is reverence, there is also fear. But reverence is not always present where there is fear, as fear is a broader concept. Reverence is a part of fear, just as odd numbers are part of the concept of numbers. Do you understand me now?
Yes, I understand.
This is the kind of question I wanted to raise when I asked whether being just always means being pious, or if being pious always means being just. Could there be justice without piety? Justice is a broader concept of which piety is only a part. Do you disagree?
No, I think you're right.
If piety is a part of justice, then we should investigate which part it is. Just as you would ask about the evenness of a number and its relationship to the broader concept of numbers, I would have no difficulty answering that an even number represents a figure with two equal sides. Do you agree?
Yes, I completely agree.
Similarly, I want you to tell me which part of justice is piety or holiness. This way, I can defend myself against Meletus' accusation of injustice or impiety, now that you have adequately instructed me on the nature of piety or holiness and their opposites.
Piety or holiness, Socrates, is the part of justice that concerns the gods, just as there is another part of justice that concerns humans.
That is good, Euthyphro. However, there is a small point I would like to clarify. What do you mean by attention? The meaning of attention cannot be the same when applied to gods as it is when applied to other things. For example, horses require attention, but not everyone is capable of attending to them, only someone skilled in horsemanship can do so. Would you agree?
Certainly.
I would assume that horsemanship is the skill of attending to horses?
Yes.
Similarly, not everyone is qualified to attend to dogs, only the huntsman.
True.
And I would also assume that the skill of the huntsman is the skill of attending to dogs?
Yes.
Just as the skill of the oxherd is the skill of attending to oxen?
Very true.
In the same way, holiness or piety is the skill of attending to the gods. Is that what you mean, Euthyphro?
Yes.
And isn't attention always intended for the good or benefit of the thing being attended to? For example, when horses are attended to by a horseman, they are improved and benefited, right?
True.
Just as dogs benefit from the attention of a huntsman and oxen benefit from the attention of an oxherd. All things are tended or attended to for their good, not for their harm.
Certainly, not for their harm.
But for their good?
Of course.
Does piety or holiness, which we have defined as the skill of attending to the gods, benefit or improve the gods? When you perform a holy act, do you make any of the gods better?
No, that is not what I meant.
And I never thought that you did, Euthyphro. I asked about the nature of attention because I believed you did not.
You understand me correctly, Socrates. That is not the kind of attention I meant.
Good. But I still need to ask, what is this attention to the gods that we call piety?
It is like the service that servants show to their masters.
I understand. It is a form of ministration to the gods.
Exactly.
Medicine is also a form of ministration or service with the goal of achieving something. Would you agree that the goal is health?
I would.
Similarly, there is an art that serves the shipbuilder to achieve a result.
Yes, Socrates, with the goal of building a ship.
Just as there is an art that serves the house builder in building a house.
Yes.
Now, my good friend, tell me about the art that serves the gods. What work does it help accomplish? You must surely know, as you claim to be the most knowledgeable person when it comes to religion.
I am telling the truth, Socrates.
Then tell me, what is the important work that the gods accomplish through our help?
The gods do many important works, Socrates.
Just like a general has many important works, but the most important one is winning in war, right?
Yes, that's right.
The same goes for a farmer. They have many important works, but the most important one is producing food from the earth, correct?
Exactly.
So, among the many important works done by the gods, which one is the most important?
I've already told you, Socrates, that it would be tiresome to learn all these things accurately. Let me simply say that piety, or holiness, is about learning how to please the gods through our words and actions, through prayers and sacrifices. Such piety is what saves families and states, just as impiety, which displeases the gods, leads to their ruin and destruction.
If you had chosen, Euthyphro, you could have answered the main question in much fewer words. But it's clear to me that you are not willing to instruct me. Otherwise, why did you divert from the point when we reached it? If you had answered me, I would have truly learned from you the nature of piety by now. Now, as the questioner, I am dependent on the one who answers, so I must follow where you lead. I can only ask again, what is piety and what is its nature? Do you mean that it is a kind of science of praying and sacrificing?
Yes, that's what I mean.
So, sacrificing is giving to the gods and prayer is asking the gods for something?
Yes, Socrates.
According to this view, then piety is a science of asking and giving?
You understand me perfectly, Socrates.
Yes, my friend, that's because I am a follower of your science and I devote my mind to it. Therefore, nothing you say will be wasted on me. So, please tell me, what is the nature of this service to the gods? Do you mean that we make requests and give gifts to them?
Yes, that's what I mean.
Is the right way of asking to ask the gods for what we want?
Certainly.
And the right way of giving is to give to them what they want from us. There would be no point in an art that gives someone something they don't want.
That's very true, Socrates.
So, Euthyphro, piety is an art that gods and humans use to interact with each other?
You can use that expression if you want.
But I have no particular preference for anything other than the truth. However, I would like you to tell me what benefit the gods receive from our gifts. It's clear what they give to us, as there is no good thing they don't provide. But how can we give any good thing to them in return is not equally clear. If they give everything and we give nothing, then it seems like we have a significant advantage in this business.
And do you think, Socrates, that the gods receive any benefit from our gifts?
But if not, Euthyphro, what is the purpose of gifts that we offer to the gods?
What else but tributes of honor? As I mentioned earlier, it pleases them.
So, piety is pleasing to the gods, but not beneficial or valuable to them.
I would say that nothing could be more valuable to them.
So once again, you're saying that piety is valuable to the gods?
Certainly.
And when you say this, can you wonder why your words don't hold firm but instead wander away? Will you accuse me of being the one who makes them wander away, not realizing that there is another, far greater artist than Daedalus who makes them go in circles, and that artist is yourself? Because, as you will see, the argument comes back to the same point. Weren't we saying that what is holy or pious is not the same as what is loved by the gods? Have you forgotten?
I remember perfectly well.
And aren't you now saying that what is loved by the gods is holy? And isn't this the same as what is valuable to them? Do you see?
That's true.
So either we were wrong in our previous assertion, or if we were right then, we are now wrong.
One of the two must be true.
Then we must start again and ask, what is piety? That is a question I will never tire of pursuing to the best of my ability. I beg you not to dismiss me, but to apply your mind fully and tell me the truth. If anyone knows, it's you. So I must keep you here until you tell me, just like Proteus. If you didn't truly know the nature of piety and impiety, I am confident that you would never have accused your elderly father of murder on behalf of a slave. You would not have taken such a risk of doing wrong in the sight of the gods, and you would have had more respect for the opinions of men. Therefore, I am sure that you know the nature of piety and impiety. Speak up then, my dear Euthyphro, and do not hide your knowledge.
Another time, Socrates, for I am in a hurry and must go now.
Oh no. My dear friend, are you really going to abandon me like this? I had hoped that you would teach me about what it means to be pious or impious. With your guidance, I could have defended myself against Miletus and his accusations. I would have explained to him that you had enlightened me, and as a result, I had abandoned my foolish and ignorant pursuit of new ideas. Now, I am determined to live a more virtuous life. Summary of Euthyphro. The dialogue revolves around the nature of piety and the question of what makes an action pious or impious. The central characters are Socrates and Euthyphro, a young priest. Euthyphro is prosecuting his own father for murder, believing it to be a pious act, while Socrates is perplexed by this assertion. The dialogue explores the dilemma of whether an action is pious because the gods approve of it, or do the gods approve of it because it is pious. Socrates challenges Euthyphro to define piety, and their discussion reveals the inherent complexity of the concept. Euthyphro initially suggests that piety is what is loved by the gods, but Socrates points out the problem with this definition. It leads to a dilemma: is something pious because the gods love it, or do the gods love it because it is pious? This conundrum highlights the need for a deeper understanding of the nature of morality. As the dialogue unfolds, Euthyphro struggles to provide a satisfying answer, and the conversation ultimately ends without a clear resolution. Euthyphro raises important philosophical questions about the foundations of morality and the relationship between divine command and ethics. It challenges us to consider whether actions are intrinsically pious or if their piety is determined solely by the approval of the gods, leading to a timeless exploration of ethics and the nature of the divine.